It is a pleasure to see you all here. So I'm excited, looking forward to the panel discussion. But again, I just want to do a very quick welcome, which I have done. And I wanted to turn it over to Rainey Hamilton. Rainey and his wonderful group of Detroit have put all this together. So thanks to them.
Welcome to Detroit, everyone. Go Tigers. On behalf of the entire NOMA Detroit committee for this conference, I'd like to welcome each of you to Detroit. We are really excited to have you here. There's some great things going on in Detroit. I would like for the committee, host committee, to stand, please. Identify yourselves. And I would like for us to recognize Lawrence Technological University, Dean Glenn Leroy, who is the Dean of the School of Architecture, and Howard Davis for their graciousness in hosting this event and providing transportation. We are hoping that you're having a good time. I think you are, right? Everyone saw the band? Everybody's having a good time? And there's more planned. We're going to have a great topic tonight to discuss urban planning and redevelopment in downtown Detroit. And with that, I'd like to also introduce our two co-chairs who have been very, very instrumental in pulling this off, Tiffany Brown and Sandra Little. Sandra, you have some comments?
Good evening, everybody, my NOMA family. Welcome to Detroit. First, I'd like to acknowledge my dean. I am a proud alumni of Lawrence Tech, Sandra and I. They've been very interested for a long time in helping with whatever they can do with NOMA Detroit. So I also want to acknowledge some of my other alumni in here. Please stand, who are NOMA members. Lawrence Tech, stand up. Did you want to say something?
I just want to say thank you. We're very excited. This is a very historical year for us. If you could tell, we're excited. We had a band outside to welcome you. It means a lot to us. Happy 40th, NOMA.
I wanted to mention one thing I forgot because I was asked to mention. There is going to be a council meeting, NOMAC, first thing tomorrow morning, 7:30. So you were being asked, if you're a council member, being asked to meet on the second floor, and you'll find a room from that location. So I wanted to mention that because I was asked to. Thank you. Tiffany.
I also wanted to say thanks to our Cast Tech band who came out. In case you missed it, some of the buses were on that Cranbrook tour, which I heard went very, very well. And it took an extra 45 minutes because everybody enjoyed it so much. But we had Cast Tech, one of our most phenomenal high schools in the city. NOMA's Rainey graduated from Cast Tech, and a couple other people went, to Cast Tech. But Diana Ross, they were outside and welcomed everyone to the reception. So if you missed it, they had a great band, the majorettes, the flag girls, the drum majors, they were all out there dancing. They had little kids out there in the routine. So there's some video, I think there's some video, but there are plenty of pictures. So in case you don't know who Dean Leroy is, did you stand already? Did you stand and wave? This is Dean Glenn Leroy. Lawrence Tech is our biggest sponsor. I just wanted to mention that, by the way. Small detail. On the bag and everything. So we should get started. We want to, in case you guys don't know who our national president is, it's Sanford Garner. You want to stand and wave? Okay, next in line is Kathy Dixon. She's right behind him. She's president-elect. Who was there? Is that it? Can we start? So I'm going to turn the mic over to Dean Leroy now, so we can get started. There are some buses who are leaving periodically through the night, but stay.
Thank you. Once again, it's great to have you here tonight. And, you know, up to today, I watched every single pitch of the Detroit Tigers playoffs run, and I'll tell you what, being with this group is worth giving up the Detroit Tigers for the day. Now, let me ask you a question before we start, though. Any Yankee fans in here? I hope next year you get a couple of hitters on the team. You know, I never thought, I mean, I'm not a big Yankee fan, and most of the people in the country are not, except for Yankee fans. But I never thought I'd feel sorry for the New York Yankees. Just wait till next year, right? Okay. Well, we have 4 speakers tonight, and afterwards we're going to have some time for question-answer discussion. So get your, as they're presenting, get your questions ready. Rainey assures me that you all aren't shy at all about questions and discussion. And this is being recorded tonight. And it'll be posted up on the internet so you can see it later and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to ask whenever you're speaking questions, we're going to have some microphones. And Tiffany, you'll be able to help me, right? Yes. With some microphones. And so always speak into a microphone when you're going to ask a question. Now, we're also having a little technical glitch, and that's one of the reasons for being a little late. So we're going to go into the first presentation. We may have to work each one of these individually. We had them all in one show, and somehow we can't get it from the computer onto the slide projector, but we can certainly get each one individually. So I'm going to introduce each speaker, and they're going to come forward. And our first speaker is Toni Griffin, and she's the director of the Max J. Bond Center of Architecture at City College of New York and a consultant for the Detroit Works Project. Toni Griffin is a professor and director of the Max Bond Center and at the Spitzer School of Architecture at City College. She maintains an active private practice, urban planning and design for the American city. Her clients include the cities of Newark, New Jersey and Detroit, Michigan. She was tapped by Detroit Works to oversee a team of economists, designers, planners, and engineers. Ms. Griffin received a Bachelor of Architecture degree from the University of Notre Dame and a Loeb Fellowship from the Harvard Graduate School of Design. She also held faculty positions at the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Toni Griffin. Come right up here. Here if you'd like.
No, can I have that mic and
Yes,
that remote?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And this is forward right here.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank Rainey Hamilton and Tiffany, who asked me a year ago or more if I would join you tonight, so I appreciate that. And I do want to take the opportunity to thank George Jackson and Malik Goodwin, who are my clients for this project. So you've heard this story a gazillion times. I'll try to throw something in there, see if you're listening. So I appreciate that, and the lateness of the hour, too, I'll try to be brief so that people can get to their Detroit celebrating in the street, which would be nice. Can we take the lights down just a little bit?
Yes.
Great. It's really interesting, this work that we're doing and the fact that it's coinciding with NOMA's 40th anniversary. A lot has been said about Detroit in the media over the last few years in particular, a lot about its declining population. In fact, when the census came out last year, there was much talked about and many national news stories about its 25% population loss, which was the largest of any U.S. city in the country at the time. dipping Detroit down to 700,000 people. Now, when NOMA was formed in the early 70s, Detroit was at a peak of 1.5 million people, and its African American population was just under 45%. 40 years later, Detroit is half the size of its total population, but it's 80% African American. So that's a very interesting statistic under which we're going to talk about the work we've been doing over the last 3 years for Detroit Works. Is there any way that spot can come out? Or you need it because you're filming? Okay, I'm going to step out of it so I'm not blinded. Sorry. So this project has been about transformation, and probably many of you, either through your direct work or in cities, have gone through the process of let's transform and revitalize the city once again. And there certainly have been a number of plans that have been underway and a number of successful projects that you're going to hear about today, and a handful of citywide projects. So what's going to make this one actually different? Part of what we hope will make this different is really facing some of the realities that have really challenged Detroit. Issues of this population loss, issues of being a majority-minority city, issues of being without a healthy economy, all contribute to the kind of problems that we're asked to face as designers. And so the issue of transformation for me as an architect and planner coming onto this project was not just to look at the physical landscape of the city, because we can all go and create these wonderful illustrative plans of a city, but it was really trying to link that to what were the underlying social and economic and environmental issues, and how what we do in terms of looking at land transformation, we're really in service to that kind of transformation. Whoa. Help. That was not the transformation I was hoping for. Yeah, no. Is it the remote that I cannot use? George, do you have a PowerPoint? You want to go now? Were you doing a slide presentation too? Yes. Oh, okay. So that won't work. Do you want me to click it from there and not use the remote? Oh, to click? Okay, let's try it again. Okay. Transformation, take 2. Okay, so we do take a very traditional sort of urban design approach to this, and part of it was thinking about the fact that in a city that has an excess of vacant land that's roughly the size of Manhattan, about 20 square miles, trying to think about how to reuse vacant land is not going to work if we're just only thinking about it in these incremental ways. And certainly small projects matter and district projects matter, but we needed to think about the overall identity of the city, which today is so much about its vacancy and overlooks so many of the positive, strong places in the city. So Detroit as a city of multiple employment districts was really important. Everyone thinks of Detroit as a one kind of company town and automobiles, but in fact there were 7 places and several industries that are really rooted and anchored in Detroit. Detroit on the Detroit River, where Canada is south of the city, is the busiest international border crossing in North America for trade. That's probably a very little known fact and an asset that only exists within the city of Detroit. Detroit as a city for connecting people to opportunity. This has obviously been a sort of one mode of transportation kind of town, being an auto town. We think that this is the opportunity in the 21st century for Detroit to use its ingenuity in transportation and move to more forms of transportation. And so we've begun to think about a whole new way with which people move around the city and the region. Because there is vacant land, and I'll talk a little bit about this a little bit more, we do think that there's an opportunity to transform and really broaden the open space identity of the city in some very unconventional ways. Food being one of them. And I just don't mean urban agriculture in terms of community gardens, but we think, and there already is, a pretty robust food network here. Detroit sitting in a fairly strong and robust agricultural region, including Canada. The way with which food is manufactured, produced, processed, sold is a much larger network, and certainly urban agriculture can play some part of that, but it's much bigger than that. We think the ways with which we can move to infrastructures that are about blue infrastructure, using natural landscapes to deal with stormwater mitigation, using greenery and forestry and orchards to actually clean air as well as produce food. And we think that there's enough room, certainly, to begin to think about a whole different range of neighborhoods. You know, so even when I first came here, I thought the image of the city, and you may find this too if this is your first time here, that you were expecting Detroit to look like an industrial kind of city. This is where they make cars and airplanes and motors. So you might be expecting the city of smokestacks and factories and buildings, but in fact, most of what the city looks like is a suburb almost. It's single-family detached homes with garages. And so a lot of that in some places of the city has been eroded, and we think that this is an opportunity to actually think about new ways of forming urban design patterns for new types of neighborhoods. So the other thing that was important for us to overcome, and some of the anxiety about doing kind of planning work like this, is either, number one, people expect that the thing that's going to change is going to change right away, and there's great panic. And we all probably are working in cities that have interesting histories of urban renewal, where people were forced to be moved from their homes because a freeway was coming through, or they were building a public housing project. So there's a lot of anxiety around the change that we're talking about and the impact that it'll have, a lot of times on our most vulnerable populations. But the reality is, the Detroit that we see today didn't just happen 5 years ago. Therefore, the change that is going to be needed isn't going to all happen in 5 years. It's going to happen over time. So it's been important for us to talk about how the change that we're beginning to shape is going to occur over different implementation horizons. We first have to stabilize and sustain the city. People need basic services. You need to make sure that vacant lots are secure. People need to feel safe. And then we can move to the notions of improving and long-term transformation. So the project that we've organized is set up under these 5 elements: economic growth, city systems, public land, land use, and neighborhoods. And I'll briefly give you highlights of what each of them are. So for economic growth, and each of these, we took the approach through our work of making sure that everyone had the same foundation of realities. A lot of times we go into planning processes in our communities, and we're working at a disadvantage because we as professionals obviously have a lot of information, but oftentimes the people that we're asking to come to the table to talk to us aren't equipped with that same level of information. And we thought for this process to really be authentic, it was important that we were more transparent with data and information, number one. And number two, if the city was really serious about the kind of transformation we needed, there were certain kind of realities we all had to face. So the obvious one is Detroit might never be a city of 1.5 million people again, and that's okay. How many people are from cities that are over 1 million people? Yeah, so it's not even half the room. So being a city of 700,000 people should be perfectly acceptable. You can have a fantastic city of that size. So it really isn't about size. What it is about, what we realize, is that Detroit is a city where there are 4 Detroiters for every 1 job. So part of the problem of Detroit in terms of its growth and revitalization is there's not a big enough economy. Like, there are not enough jobs to service the people who are here. And so our position is that we really had to think about how we can increase opportunities for jobs in the city, not just in the region. And in doing that, obviously thinking about all the issues of preparing our workforce, as well as thinking about the opportunities of those 7 employment districts that I talked about before. So we're looking at the industries of industrial, education, and medical, new economy, which is the creative class, and information technology, and local entrepreneurship, which is very strong here. And so this is where we actually find, anchored on certain institutions and businesses, that there really is more opportunity to grow in the city and beyond just automobiles. It was important for us to also think about the city system. So this is a basic sort of fact. So you had a city that's 139 square miles. It could house 2 million people. And so you design your revenue system and your tax structure based on, getting tax dollars from that amount of people to help service a city that size. So now you have a city that's the same size with less than half the population it was planned for. So guess what? You don't have enough revenue coming in to support paying for all the services you need, transportation, water, your trash pickup, et cetera, which means what? The few of you here are getting higher taxes, you're paying higher water bills, and guess what? Because a lot of your population is living in poverty, 30%, that cost is borne onto them just as equally as it's borne onto someone who has a higher paying job. So again, in addition to just looking at what the city looks like, it was important for us to figure out and align what we want the city to look like with how it performed, how it functioned, how affordable it was. And so we started really trying to take a look at, for example, back in, I think this was a number from the 70s, the tax revenue for an area of the city of that size is roughly $150,000, whereas today, with the removal of housing and people leaving, it's only now generating $32,000. So that's not sustainable. And so when we have to think about a land use plan, we have to think about how to correct and right-size that so it is a more affordable place to live. And we think this gives us an opportunity to look at different forms of actual infrastructure that moves the city to being more affordable, from the life cycle of systems to public transportation to environmental impacts. So we're beginning to look at a whole, and I won't go through this in detail, but we're beginning to look at a whole way with which, based on the densities of different parts of the city and the neighborhoods we design, this is the way which we'll begin to align their service delivery. So everyone still gets services. Your water pressure in your shower is going to be the same tomorrow as it is today. But you're going to you can start to realign or change the capacity of the overall system so that you're not having waste and inefficiencies in how you do that. And over time, this begins to lower the cost, and we begin to not have the same water flowing through areas that no longer has the same population or the same business demands as industry did. And as I said before, we can start looking at landscape as a new form of 21st century architecture. We can start looking at forests that clean air. We can start looking at how we align some of the heavy industrial that's still in the city with industrial forest buffers. And we can begin to look at really interesting ways of dealing with our stormwater management in ways where we're not going to dig big culverts and tunnels under our streets anymore, but we can actually begin to create infrastructure that doesn't displace people and actually becomes a neighborhood amenity and helps to increase adjacent land property values. And we are, and conversations are already happening, to begin to look at more efficient ways of mass transit. And one of the things that we're hoping to introduce is that you can actually begin to think about different modes of vehicles, kinds of vehicles to help service the city. It's not just bus, it's not just light rail, but you might be able to expand that to a whole range of ways with which people can get around. And that it begins to change the way the city looks when you start to use those historic radial boulevards in ways with new forms of public transportation. A lot of the public vacant land in the city is owned by different public agencies. So there are over 150,000 vacant parcels in the city of Detroit, and about 64,000 of them are owned by 7 different public land agencies. And they all have different missions and objectives. And so one of our big recommendations is that they collaborate more and that their institutions look at land dispositions in ways that help to achieve some of these other goals. So they need to help us achieve how we bring more business to Detroit. They need to help us achieve how we build new infrastructure. And so it's requiring more cooperation and some kinds of agreements and protocols that all of those agencies have to work within. So this is not like a NOLI plan showing you where all the buildings are. It's actually the inverse of a NOLI plan showing you where all the vacancy is. And you can see it's pervasive and all over the city. So it's not like just one part of the city is experiencing this. It really is all over the city, and it's a combination of vacant land, and it's also a combination of the last 5 or 7 years of excessive foreclosure rates too. So there are abandoned properties that the city is dealing with as well. And so one of the things that we're beginning to look at here, if I have it very quickly, are helping the agencies think about the ways with which they can make decisions in order to affect certain change from happening. Because the way the land changes is pretty quick. You know, the land that has a house on it today in 6 months might have a foreclosure sign on it, and in 2 years might not have been picked up again and may be at a deteriorated state. So we didn't want to sort of create this static picture that said, this is what you should have this block look like, because we can't control those market forces. Instead, what we wanted to do is have agencies be able to, given certain conditions, be able to make certain smart decisions about how they can reuse vacant land. And this has a direct implication on our neighborhoods. So there are 33,000 dangerous buildings, there are 80,000 vacant housing units, and we've got an inverse. So we don't have enough demand for the supply of vacant single-family homes, which we have the most of, and then we don't have enough multifamily housing for the high demand of people who want apartments and townhouses and condos. So there is a housing market here. We just don't have the supply for it, which is an opportunity. And so as we begin to look at the fact that this may suggest that we need more diverse housing types and we need different types of neighborhoods, both to retain Detroiters who are already here and give them more choice, but also attract people who are coming in. So based on certain types of neighborhoods and depending on their vacancy and what kind of housing or building stock they have, we've come up with different strategies that different sectors can do to help to rebuild and stabilize neighborhoods, whether it's in a low vacancy area, a moderate vacancy area, or a high vacancy area, which we've actually said in our plan we should not be building new housing in. These are areas that really should start to move towards a very different land use, but not necessarily the traditional residential neighborhood that they have been, because there is such an excess of land. We've got to be smarter about the density patterns that we create and more focused around how we move people into neighborhoods that are more sustainable. And then finally, as it relates to land use, it's about, well, how do we put that all into motion? And so looking at the issues of weak market and vacant housing and vacant land, we're beginning to put in a strategy that, as I said before, first took a scan at looking at where we had these patterns of vacancy. So the bluer areas have the least amount of vacancy, the pink areas have the most. And these are really large areas. The map is deceiving, but the scale of this is enormous. So these pink areas that you see are actually substantially large in size. And we understand who's living there. We understand how much of the land is divided into each of those categories. We understand the income profile. So it was important for us to know who's on the ground and whose lives are we affecting when we start to make these changes. And then we go through a whole series of urban design strategies to help us determine that opportunities for different types of neighborhoods. So ending really quickly, we have places that really can be the kind of traditional fabric of the city, both in medium densities and low densities. We have neighborhoods that are your traditional neighborhood centers where you have nodes of commercial retail and perhaps housing above, and then you have single-family homes behind. We have mixed-use neighborhoods like in Midtown and downtown where most of you are staying. We have the Midtown district where it's not quite the downtown densities, but some of our biggest anchor institutions, our healthcare, medical, culture, are all mixed use with housing and commercial. And then we have some innovative neighborhoods, recognizing that landscape is going to be a big part of the city's identity in the future. And we think that there are new ways that are not suburban in pattern, but that integrate housing types and residential in a much more interesting way, all the way to ways like the famous Lafayette Park by Mies van der Rohe, which I don't know if you had a tour today, but I hope you'll see that while you're here, mixes patterns of high-rise, low-rise, and landscape for another type of living environment. like a live work, Detroit has a live make. Detroit is known for making things, so we're creating a new typology which actually allows, in a much more liberal way, the ability for production and housing to coexist. And then lastly, to something we call innovative productive, which actually allows for an even more natural environment of living and working. And then again, all the way to those areas we call innovative ecology, where we're no longer going to have residential communities, but we can create landscapes that actually work towards contaminated lands and cleaning them, air pollution, and water management. And that translates into things that we can also do along our corridors that are way too wide for the kind of traffic that we no longer have on them. Light industry, general industry, and heavy industry will still be a part of the city. And all of that leads up to a new land use map, different than we have before. So I'll stop there, wait for questions, and have my colleagues come up and follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to be loading each one of these manually, but as they're being loaded, I'm going to introduce each speaker. This is out of necessity. So our next speaker is going to be George Jackson, Jr., and George Jackson, Jr. became the president and CEO of the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation in February 2002. The DEGC is a private not-profit corporation devoted exclusively to supporting Detroit's economic development projects and initiatives by providing technical, financial, negotiation, and development assistance to the city and the private sector business community. It was the lead organization for implementation of permanent revitalization improvements for the Super Bowl and XL. What is that? Which one was that? 40, thank you. I'm glad you all speak in Roman numerals, and I don't. Held in Detroit. The organization also played a major role in the development of the Detroit riverfront. Mr. Jackson was the Chief Development Officer for the City of Detroit from 2006 to 2010. He was also past chairman and serves as a board member of the Next Energy Corporation, and he was the Director of Consumer Marketing for DTE Energy. George W. Jackson is a native of Detroit. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Human Resource Development from Oakland University and a Master of Arts Management in Business Management from Central Michigan University. Ladies and gentlemen, George Jackson.
Thank you. Which way is forward? Forward there. Okay. Good evening. And just want to say that, you probably wonder how I got from those degrees to end up over economic development. I just followed the money, okay? And, I started in human resources. I saw all the records of the company, and I found out who got the biggest bonuses, and that's where I ended up doing. Just following them. I said, hey, it's time for a career change. And I'm not going back to school to get one. I figured that one out. But, but from that standpoint, I'm happy that you're here in Detroit and enjoying my wonderful city, my hometown, and you have some good speakers tonight. We all work very closely together. We all have very distinct roles, but at the same time, they all overlap. And so that's from that standpoint, where I stand is that, the bottom line is you got to get stuff done. And that's what we do. We're an implementation agency. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. They overloaded the slides here. We'd be here all night if I did that. That's one of our mission statements that they paid somebody before I got to the corporation to, and I just, excuse my language, but, my job is to get done. That's the mission statement at the Detroit Growth Corporation, okay? That's just it. And everybody knows me will say that. I want to introduce one of my colleagues here, our Vice President of Project Management, who is an architect. Obviously, I'm not. And that's Malik Goodwin here, Vice President Project Management. Hometown guy, too, went to the University of Michigan. And, he converted from being an urban planner to an architect, and now he's back to actually getting some stuff done. Okay, but anyway, just to give you an idea of what we do at the Detroit Growth Corporation, I'm going to go through some of these pretty fast for the sake of time. We are responsible for business, economic development, business attraction, expansion, and retention. So we're the ones who work with companies all over the world, all over the country, and basically try to get them to locate in Detroit, which is not an easy job. But at the same time, we've been very successful in regards to this. And from that standpoint, we're a very unique economic development organization because we actually do more than most economic development organizations do who represent a city. And that is, we have a staff of, we have just as many, as we have the traditional business disciplines, but we also have just as many people who are architects, engineers, construction folks, because we also do implementation on behalf of the city of Detroit. We work with private companies, developers, but also we have taken over a lot of the engineering and construction and things of this nature and project management from the city. And I'll explain that a little later. I'll go back to your project management, technical assistance, but we also do financing. We are a financial entity as well. So we put money into deals. We fill gaps that are not filled by the banks and private sectors, entities, or by the equity put in by the developer. And our job, basically one of our goals is to get out of gap financing. We want to get prices up and things of this nature to the point in terms of the values in the city and real estate that we could be out of the gap financing business one point way or another. But at the same time, so we are the deal makers. We put these deals together financially. We do the project management of certain things, various projects, be it an actual deal that we are with housing, or we'll do it from a standpoint of just placemaking, because we got to do placemaking, and as most urban cities have to do, but particularly in Detroit, placemaking so that we could get to the point that somebody says, yes, I want to invest. So we can't just start with, come on in, let's invest. We got to help develop the place, do the placemaking itself. I'm go through this one. We got all these are boards that are under the EGC. We are very unique in the standpoint of a model is that we are a private corporation, but we also staff and run several city agencies, city authorities that could be within the city of could be located under city government. There's a reason why we have it that way. But at the same time, it gives us maximum flexibility, because when we want to be private, we could be private, and when we need to be public, we could be public. And so we're very good at playing that. But I will say this, that is that in terms of my job as president and CEO, the biggest role that I play, when people ask me, what's the most important part of your job? It is we are a business organization. We're not a political organization. So the most important part of my job is to keep politics and politicians away from my staff. And I'll take those bullets, because that's how we get S done, okay? Because if they are involved, it doesn't get done, okay? And I'll say that we are a business organization, and we are an advocate as well as a conduit in regards to making this happen and working with private sector entities, as well as other foundations, other public entities in regards to doing that. But project management is one group, and it gives you an idea of what this is a group that's under Malik Goodwin, for example. And then we do finance, and you heard earlier today about the book Cadillac. I know you met my friend John Furchell. We're kindred spirits. And I understand that you had a presentation from him. I hope you probably figured out what that means. But it gives you an idea. We are chief negotiators for most major deals that the city does in regards to even its own assets from that standpoint. And we act as a fiduciary contracting entity in regards to philanthropy or projects such as Detroit Works from that standpoint, as well as managing it or those types of projects. Underwriting, we do our own underwriting. We have a very sophisticated financial staff. But getting beyond that, business development, but this is some of the successes that we have had recently in regards to attracting businesses to the city of Detroit, as Ms. Griffin mentioned. Again, and one thing that came out of Detroit Works and Tony Griffin has done a fantastic job, is that we were all excited about, and up in arms about, our population has fallen. One thing that Detroit Works, one of the things that really hit me about Detroit Works and really has changed my thinking, is that, we should be concerned about that population, but what we really should be concerned about even more than the population at this point is jobs. creating jobs. Because if we create jobs, I think the population situation will take care of itself. And so, from that standpoint, again, that's one of the benefits we have received from Detroit Works. But, and again, we have worked very closely with various companies, and as Mr. Griffin mentioned, we are experiencing a revival in downtown, midtown. You'll hear that from Sue Mosey later, in regards to having more people wanting to enjoy urban living. And to the point that now we have a very enviable problem as far as I'm concerned, because I remember we had a lot of empty buildings and nobody who wanted to develop them. Now we have a shortage of buildings, and we have more demand than supply in regards to people wanting to live in. A lot of them are recent college graduates, young folks who graduated from college, and now they don't want to live in a suburb, and we're benefiting from that. Even some of us baby boomers want to move into urban developments now. So, but from that standpoint, I always tease everybody about this because I had one of those young college graduates. I only had one left in the house, in my home, and he's been looking for a place for like almost 6 months to try to move into downtown Detroit, and I really want him to be happy, and so I'm gonna give him a good housewarming present too, But here's some more examples of companies that have moved into the city of Detroit. And what has happened is a lot of these companies, they bring with them a much more educated, much more diverse, and younger workforce. And they're also, as you notice, they are not necessarily in the traditional companies that were in the city of Detroit, which we tend to be more of a manufacturing base. We're still working on with those companies, don't get me wrong, but at the same time we are diversifying. Much more creative companies are now moving into the city. But here is the real important part to me, is that building that foundation. As I said earlier, we are not in a position where we had to actually say, we have to create an environment. So we have to do things to make people feel, look, this is a place I want to invest in. I mean, you're going to hear that in a few minutes here in regards to what's going on the river, on the riverfront. Create an environment that it then induces investment. And that is where people with your discipline comes in, and from the standpoint of making sure that we do the right types of things. Because Faye Nelson, what she's doing on the riverfront actually does spur investment of more than just the public space improvements. It spurs investment in housing, spurs investment in retail and recreational development on our riverfront, which was historically industrial. But anyway, these are some of the older projects that we undertook, for when people come to this city and say, well, nothing's happened in Detroit, I know one thing. Me and all three of these people that speaking to you tonight, and Malik, we've been very busy. And it's amazing that, when we hear this, we have the same problems that most major cities have. We have certain areas that, I would say, are a challenge, but we also have some areas that we feel very proud of and we think have a very high quality of life. And these are some of the examples. From Trappers Alley, we still have industrial development, 2 stadiums, and the difference between when we built those stadiums in the day, not only did it transform the east side of Woodward Avenue, but it took some teams that were real bums, and now we have some winners, and I really suffer because I'm a 23-year Detroit Lions season ticket holder, But the kids were pretty young when I started buying those tickets. But, we also have various development that is going on here. And we also now have casinos. So make sure that you, while you're here, you get over to the casino because that basically is helping us financially to a great extent, And we'll be happy to give you a ride over there, too, But, but in addition to that, again, you see a number of projects we've done over the last 10 years that, include both industrial, residential, and so we are not running away from our industrial base. And I know Tony Griffin mentioned that in regards to this employment piece. That industrial base is still here because we have we have a labor, the skilled labor to do that, the workforce here is very well trained, and they don't have to, now they're not just staying in the areas of industry, but a lot of them are transferring over to and transitioning over to creative industries. Dramatic increase in regards to infrastructure, development in our downtowns. We mentioned the 2 stadiums and the 2 teams, and also public spaces that the key thing here is creating that quality of life that induces development. We are an implementation organization, so we work with everybody from that standpoint, and then our job is to get it done and to try to make whatever plan is developed, we are responsible for getting in the dirt and also finding the money to make it happen. So that was it. We have a few historic, you saw the book Cadillac Hotel. If you want to get an idea of the finance staff at the DEGC, to make that deal happen, it took 22 layers of financing. I can't take full credit for that because the staff really convinced me that we could get this thing done. I had the bulldozer coming down Michigan Avenue. And, but they definitely, but that's how we work at the DGC. It is a very dynamic and integrative process. So, but it gives you an idea of, and you were there and met John Furchill, and I'm sure he went through that. The Broadwick Tower, a new development here. Again, addressing the housing shortage and the fact that people are now moving back into the city in certain areas. And also the key is that prices are going up. You're going to hear a lot of that from Sue Mosey. We're busy, and we're working on a number of other projects now in regards to addressing this need for the need in regards to the housing in both Midtown, downtown, and then soon the riverfront, because I definitely want to find a place for my son. The David Whitney building is another project that we are working on in this regard. These are buildings that have been empty over, 20 years? And all of a sudden, and the prices are going up. The Whitney is getting up there in that $160 per square foot. They've even done some stuff that over $2 a square foot. And so, and that gets back to the point that I mentioned before in regards to trying to eliminate the need for that gap financing that we so desperately still need. And reclaiming the riverfront, I'm not going to speak. I'm going to let Faye really take this. But basically, when our riverfront was industrial. We had factories. We had cement companies. We started a vision plan. We then went from a vision to a district plan and did implementation. The key thing in terms of the role of the DEGC was the district planning process, which was a collaborative partnership, and also negotiating deals which to remove the cement silos that were on our waterfront. And Detroit had tried to get those cement silos off his waterfront for about, it had to be 44, 45 years. And, I was like 1 year old then. And, I never thought that I'd be doing the negotiation to make that happen when I was in kindergarten. But it did happen. And, and what we have now is something that really is something to be proud of. That's quite a transformation in 10 years. That's a 1.9 stretch of river here. That's not like, most of our riverfront developments in this country are smaller than that. And so I'm going to let Faye get into the detail, but our role there is to work with that and support the Riverfront Conservancy, the green space that they're working on, the development there, and to take those facts. And when she's going to show you some slides on the film that'll blow you away about what can happen in less than a 10-year period, and from all factories and cement companies. So this is going to give you some of the steps that we had to take to create that sense of place. And to make it what you'll see. I know I got to hurry up here, and they give you an idea of what it used to look like, as a matter of fact. Faye has the real pretty pictures, but that's what we had to deal with, and that's what Malik and his crew had to deal with. And so a lot of remediation, a lot of demolition, a lot of negotiations to get folks out of there. And this is we just announced this one. This is the Globe building. And this was an older building. Some people say it's historic because Henry Ford, they say it had something to do with it. I think he basically just walked in front of it. And, in Detroit, they call everything historic. But, and they wanted you to do all kind of, make the project cost a lot more money than it should. But we finally got a deal done here, and the Department of Natural Resources. This will be outdoor adventure center in the middle of the state park that is now along the riverfront. And so we announced that property about a couple Saturdays ago. And so this will be a beautiful interpretive center now. Paradise Valley, for sake of time, I'm just in there. A cultural district, there was African American, a lot of African American history in that we've also revitalized. And again, let me see, public space, again, placemaking, and some of my favorite spots here, the restaurants and bars in town. You know, one time we couldn't do a real pub crawl. Now we have a good time. Okay, and attractions that we have, and let you know, things are happening in Detroit. We just closed a deal for our first Whole Foods. People say, and in closing, I'll say, that was another one of those deals, like the cement companies and off the riverfront and the book Cadillac said we could not get it done. And we ended up with Whole Foods. Every time since I took this job, people tell me, and all the politicians and the first ladies of the mayor, the mayor's wives, you know, of course, one year we went through 3 in 1 year. But I did my best, but I will say this, and that is, they always said that everyone said the same thing. We want 2 things. We want you to get 2 things from the Economic Development Corporation, George. We want a Whole Foods, and we want a cheesecake factory. Well, we got the Whole Foods. Be truthful, I really don't give a damn about Cheesecake Factory. Okay, all right. We got it, and the last but not least, the Capitol Park project. This is another historic renovation, rehab here. We involved 3 buildings. We rehabbed the park. We just announced this time a new developer to renovate 3 of the properties here in partnership with the state and the county. And we'll say this, is that the park has already been, we've already renewed the park. The company came out of Lansing, but the good part of the story was the bids to do this development of these 3 properties, which will produce about 204 lofts as well as retail. The bids came from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific in terms of companies who are interested in investing in the city of Detroit. Thank you very much.
That was George Jackson, otherwise known as Sue Mosey's warm-up act. Sue, you got a tough act to follow, you know. Okay, well, our next speaker is Sue Mosey, and she's been the president of, she's now the president of the reconstituted Midtown Detroit, Inc., and she has been president of that organization and its predecessor organization for 24 years. This nonprofit organization is responsible for community development, marketing, public space maintenance, security services, real estate development, and arts programming within Detroit's University Cultural Center, now known as Midtown. She has overseen public improvements such as new streetscapes and park development, greenway planning and construction, and real estate development and management. And I'm very happy to say that in Detroit we have an urban center, and she is our landlord, and so I'm going to be nice to her. Ms. Mosey holds a degree in urban planning from Wayne State University, and I'd like to introduce to you Sue Mosey.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Now, I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to go really, really quick because I know we're getting late on into the evening. But we're a nonprofit planning and economic development agency. We work in about 5 areas. One's real estate, one's arts events, one's small business development and entrepreneurship. We do infrastructure, and then we do a lot of just planning as well. This is a shot of our district. It's pretty big. It's about 3 miles long and 1 mile wide. It's just north of the downtown, so we connect directly to the core of the downtown. We have lots of activity here. We have our 3 major anchor institutions, the Detroit Medical Center, Henry Ford Health Systems, Wayne State here. Lots of college students between Wayne and the College for Creative Studies. So we have a very vibrant daytime sort of work for. So the challenge for us, as it's been for downtown, is sort of repositioning ourselves a lot more into the residential market, because from residential, a lot of other good things come. So there's been a lot of investment in Midtown and a lot that's underway. Now, a lot of that's in really big institutional campus development. So in addition to Henry Ford Health Systems coming online now with a $500 million to $1 billion plan, the medical center is also underway with major new facilities. Wayne State's actually dedicating a new biomedical facility this week, which is the largest construction project in their history. So lots and lots of activity. Lots of new dormitory beds have been built in the last 5 years or so, and there's more coming online there. I think that's one of the trends you're going to be seeing a lot more of in the neighborhood. We work with the downtown organizations on funding privately, clean services, lots of services that in other cities, the city governments might be able to have the resources to take care of. But George's organization, our organization, and the Downtown Partnership Phase organizations, we all raise funds to keep our spaces picked up and maintained. One of the things we're doing in Midtown is taking a lot of our one-way streets back to two-ways with bike lanes. This is something that is long overdue. These, as Tony mentioned, these roadways were built for a different time when people were just driving out of town as fast as they could get. Now we're building for the people who are living there and the people that are investing there and the people that are deciding to open businesses there. We're building infrastructure to connect down to the DeQuinder Cut, which maybe you'll see when you're here, that will connect down to the riverfront. So you'll be able to go from Wayne State University on a dedicated pathway all the way down to Faye's beautiful riverfront. We're also recently merged with an organization to the north, so our neighborhood's a little bit bigger. And we are recently have taken over the deed to a couple of 2-acre parks that General Motors had once developed up there that have really gotten into poor shape. So we're going to be reinvesting in those and maintaining those. Again, this goes back to George's comment. Maintaining quality of place and creating quality of place is key to all of our efforts here in Detroit and the greater downtown. We also run a lot of matching grant initiatives like facades. We help businesses design and pay for all sorts of improvements to their buildings. For instance, this is a little building on Cass that a local sculptor bought. And we really wanted to have storefronts on Cass, so we're financing some new storefronts to go in there. We financed this building, which was a horrible vacant liquor store, into 3 new beautiful storefronts. We're paying for a new storefront on a cafe in the neighborhood with outdoor patios, doing a lot of those things. And again, we fund those through matching grants that with foundation funds that we raise. It's another project everybody in Detroit's involved in. Everybody's money's in it. George has money in it. I have money into it. Every other organization has money. But we're really thrilled to see this old historic theater. It was a Howard Crane Theater, which is now being restored into a live music venue. This is right on Woodward Avenue. This is a new coffee house that we did a joint venture with that is also on Woodward Avenue. That's a great new local haunt in the neighborhood. This is a building that we recently bought that we're adding to a small hotel that we have. This will be extended stay units, full apartments that we're still fundraising for, but we hope to bring those online in another year. And this is a new building that we're going to close by the end of the year. It's a 3-story commercial building on a vacant lot on Woodward. So this is just across from the Detroit Medical Center. We've been trying to get this thing closed. It'll have a new markets and funding from our Invest Detroit and grant funding and state funding and many other sources in order to get that project built. This is another one we bought. We really wanted to retain this building as restaurant space for the neighborhood, so we have a restaurant. We're building out. We're closing on this within 30 days. We did get a large grant for the acquisition, and we're building 4 units of housing above. This is a church we bought. This was vacant, and we also thought this was a great little Swedenborgen church, and we wanted to do a music and arts center here. So we received a large grant. We bought it. And we are going to turn this into a music and arts center, working closely with Wayne State's theater department on this project. And then this is our latest acquisition, which is a challenging project. It's about a $32 million project, rehab of this building. This is a large multi-unit building that was closed I don't know how many times. This building failed, and before we bought it, like 5 owners had bought it in the last couple years. So we're like, we really need to just get this and figure it out. It's going to take a lot of subsidy to do the right thing here. We're working with many folks to get this done, but we're going to build 129 units of housing, some commercial on the ground floor. We actually have to build a parking deck adjacent to it, which is where the real challenge of the financing really takes place. We're very close. I think we're within $1 million now of the gap. to get that project done. Tech Town, we're also now doing a district plan with all the stakeholders up in the Tech Town area. This is funded by the New Economy Fund. So again, we can begin to get that real estate activity going up there. Lots of vacant land, lots of buildings that still need to be redeveloped. This is a shot of our new offices on Woodward. Again, part of a whole block redevelopment. And George mentioned lots of demand for housing. So we're running the Live Midtown and Downtown Residential Incentive Programs. If you work for some of the anchor organizations or 5 downtown companies, you can get a $20,000 down payment from us. Plus, we'll put in another $7,500 from Citizens Bank. And then we'll also give you rental assistance if you decide to rent in the district. So we've closed on over 676 applications so far, and we have about $8 more million in that program to spend to keep encouraging people to move here to the neighborhood. Many people in Midtown, you see a breakdown, how many people are moving from where. We have some people, about 37 from Metro. We have 44% moving from other disinvested parts of the city, and some people moving from out of the area. Downtown, way more people moving in from the Metro due to all the large numbers of people being transferred downtown. I won't go into all that. In terms of new initiatives and housing that's in our pipeline, we have close to 1,000 units right now that's either under construction or being financed for adding to our housing pipeline. These are all of the supporting initiatives and organizations that we work with all the time. It takes all of these folks and many more that aren't even on here to get the work done that all of us in this room are doing. Tony mentioned a light rail project that we are still counting on coming up down Woodward Avenue. A lot of work was done, headed up by DEGC and also by Invest Detroit and others with all the stakeholders to do a TOD plan, Transit Oriented Development Plan. That's been completed, and now that's driving our zoning changes that we're doing in the city. And we're looking to increase our density. So this is a good shot of where we are density-wise. We were comparing ourselves to Philadelphia. So downtown, which has historically never been a residential downtown, has a long way to go in terms of adding density. They're only at 6 now. Center City, Philadelphia is at 30. You know, if downtown Detroit got to 20, that would be fantastic in the next 10, 15 years. Midtown's at about 12.3. We want to get to at least 20. If we can do that in 15 years, that would be great. And that'll start really making an economically sustainable neighborhood. It takes a while, but we're on our way to doing that. This just shows where some of the targeted investments going that we're driving. And of course, we still have to continue to raise gap subsidy until we can close the gap between what it costs and what rents and values we can drive out of the development. So again, I've mentioned that. These are just some of the new projects coming into the area. This is a small bar and restaurant that's opening within 30 days in the Park Shelton. Again, Georgia's staff helped finance this. I put in money in this, and we're going to get this one done. It's in a beautiful historic property. This one, we're all in as well. This is a former Hebrew school that's being renovated for 37 units of loft housing. This is closing shortly as well. This is some of the DMC investment. This was a new children's specialty center. This is a new heart hospital. They did a lot of, this is a new Wayne State facility that's also being built right now over in the medical center. This is the Whole Foods that George mentions coming into Midtown. This is the Newberry building that was also recently done that has 28 units of fully occupied housing. It's another building that was done in the neighborhood that has 20 units of housing and 10 creative companies in it. This is our Contemporary Museum, which is also undergoing a big plan now for public space, again, quality. This is our Burton, a former school that was vacated. Now it's a very big, lively Montessori program, really necessary to have that kind of amenity for our neighborhood. This was a little former gas station, and we put in some money as well as Hudson Weber to redo it back to its original configuration. And this is a new project under development on Woodward, which is 61 units of market rate apartments with 15,000 square feet of commercial. So all of these things are financed. This one is now almost done, called the Auburn. Again, everyone's in this one. We have 58 units of housing, almost all leased now. We're just delivering the units by the end of the month. And then we have all the commercial space. That's the really good news. All the commercial space, about 10 spaces, are now leased with really interesting local businesses. So we're real excited about that. more student housing coming online. This is one that we're particularly interested in. This building had a fire. It's one of the nicest buildings in the neighborhood. We purchased it with a local developer. We believe now we're putting in $5 million in the renovation. We believe we have a real live bank putting in the other $5 million. It's about a $10 million renovation, which we think will start shortly. It's another one that was, this was a really bad drug building. This recently just got picked up and is now going to be renovated for student and professional housing. Same with this one. We got this from the city for 10 grand, which was overpaying, because this building is not structurally, we're gonna have to raise like millions of dollars to do this building, but it's a really nice building right near Woodward, so we're gonna do it. This is the Green Garage, a green business incubator. This was originally a vacant Model T showroom. Now we have 25 new green businesses that are operating out of here. This is the same people I took over to have a beer after that, and I said, look, now that you've done that, buy this castle. And they said, okay. So they went out and bought it, and they bought all the property around it, and they're actually going to be doing this partly residential and partly an urban lodge, which is somewhere between the hostel and the little hotel I have. So we'll see how that goes, but it's going to be a cool project. This is another one that just closed on financing to completely renovate this property. These two also are being closed on shortly. They're great buildings, and these two are being redone for affordable housing. This one's going all market rate. We're a partner in this. This was vacated by Wayne State University. We talked them into selling it at a good price. We partnered with a developer, and now this is under construction. And we're also funding the build-out of another building, the Willie's Commercial, that's going to have a new bike and watch manufacturing location and sales center amongst an expanded organic bakery and a few other businesses that are opening up in there. The sheriff redid this building. This is Wayne State's new biomedical research building they're doing, and then Cardinal Health is another project we've all been working on. That is a supplier company to our medical center that's opening up in the neighborhood and bringing 180 jobs and creating new jobs as well. I always put this in because I'm helping this one young guy up on Virginia Park that moved here from Cleveland to save Detroit. Okay, that was a good one. And so he came, and he just started buying up property, and we now got him a line of credit. So now he keeps buying a house at a time. He does them, and then he gets a bunch of Wayne State students. He's about the same age, and they all come up there, and they live in mass, and then he goes to the next house. So it's a nice little model for a really cool historic block in the neighborhood. New architectural firm bought this really cool building and redid it. This one's all been redone up in the New Center District, which is in the northern edge of our neighborhood. Again, this really is the kind of housing a lot of our professionals and folks that work at Henry Ford Health Systems need and want, and we need a lot more of it. Some of the businesses that are moving in, a lot more, but lots of coffee, lots of yoga, lots of banks. Okay, so now hopefully we're over that, and we're moving into other stuff. Okay, with that, I'm going to give you Faye.
This is a 1 by 3 mile area. This is just amazing, and I don't know how you're not completely exhausted and out of breath after that presentation. It's just an amazing amount of work that's going on. Well, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our final speaker, and I have to actually get to the right piece of paper. It's Faye Nelson, and she's the executive director of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. Committed to the revitalization of Detroit, Faye Nelson joined the nonprofit Detroit Riverfront Conservancy in 2003 as president and CEO. A native Detroiter, she is putting her management and strategic skills to work as she leads the transformation of Detroit's riverfront. Nelson earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Mercy College of Detroit and a law degree from the University of Detroit Law School. Under her leadership, the Conservancy represents one of the most successful public-private partnerships in the area that includes foundations, corporations, the public sector, and the community of large, all of which have come together to support the revitalization and sustainability of the riverfront. Prior to joining the Conservancy, she was Vice President of Governmental Affairs for Wayne State University, where she led the development of the Wayne State Research and Technological Park, now known as TechTown. Let me introduce to you Faye Nelson.
Thank you very much. So it's always kind of tough to be the last act. So I'm very pleased to be here this evening. Rainey, thank you so much for inviting me to present. It is wonderful to be here with my colleagues. As George mentioned, you heard from Sue, we all work together. This is all a connected process as we work to focus on all of the different areas, places, and spaces that all constitute our great city of Detroit. My presentation will begin. I want to show you a couple of slides of the riverfront. This is, I want to give you a sense of the condition of the waterfront, and these visuals aren't 20 years ago or 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, these pictures were taken in, I would say, the early 2000s. So you've got here, this gives you a sense of what our waterfront looked like. It was in essentially, slow down for a moment, please. It was essentially in a very abandoned, neglected space. The lots were filled with abandoned buildings, abandoned cars, weeded lots. The visual you see here represents one of George's favorite pictures, I believe, and those are the cement silos. The Conservancy, and you'll hear a little bit more about who we are and what we do, our mission and our vision. Before we could even do anything from a development standpoint, those cement silos had to leave, and based upon the strength, extraordinary strength of our public and private partners, in this instance, the City of Detroit, led by George Jackson and his team, we were able to really move forward and begin developing our waterfront. Next visual. So you can get a feel for how we felt about our waterfront. Think about areas like Pittsburgh and Chicago and Baltimore and how they very strategically use their riverfront to not only support that sense of place and space, quality of life, but also serving as a really critical catalyst, if you will, for economic development. These were pictures. Here's another wonderful picture of our silos, the piles of cement. This is the way our riverfront looked, and I would say that picture realistically was snapped somewhere in the 2002, 2003 time frame. So this is real recent. So what I'd like to do now is take a pause, and we're going to run a short video, so it'll be a little bit different, which really tells the story of our Detroit riverfront. And what you will hear is an amazing story. What oftentimes, just as part of our community, we hear amongst ourselves is how we don't come together, how we don't work together, the city, the suburbs. But this is I believe, one of the most exceptional stories of how we have come together. The public sector, the private sector, foundations, corporations, City of Detroit, broad-based, and again, the broad-based public sector, our community at large, to support not only the restoration, but the revitalization of our riverfront. So it's a wonderful story, and I'm going to pause right here. We can go. I hope we'll go.
This beautiful international riverfront is representative of who we are as a community.
I lived in another city right on their riverfront, and when I came back to Detroit, I wanted that same type of experience, somewhere that was centrally located, that had access to the riverfront.
The Detroit Riverfront Conservancy is a nonprofit organization. We were established in 2003 with a two-pronged mission. First and foremost, to develop the public space on the Detroit riverfront, and as importantly, to serve as an anchor for economic development.
When we came down as General Motors in 1996, you did not see people walking baby carriages or walking their dogs or walking hand in hand along the riverfront. It's changed the way a lot of people experience the city of Detroit. It allows people to come together in a beautiful, safe, fun environment.
I've got a group from church that after the 9:30 Sunday school hour, we'll go home and change into something, and we will walk the river walk all the way down to Cobo Hall.
We held community meetings listening very clearly to what it is the community was interested in as it related to their riverfront.
I became involved with the Riverfront Conservancy at its inception several years ago because the riverfront is probably the most underused piece of real estate that we have in the city of Detroit.
We are in the first phase, which is the East Riverfront, 3.5 miles from Joe Louis Arena to just east of the Belle Isle Bridge. We're developing green space, all connected by the ever-popular Riverwalk, which in essence is a greenway, a pathway that connects communities.
And we had a tremendous opportunity with the DeQuinder Cut, which had been essentially a negative asset to a tremendous positive one for the community. And it allows people now through the Lafayette Parks and all the way to Eastern Market to access the riverfront.
Greenways provide us an alternative to getting into the car or getting on a bus. I can get on my bike to take the DeQuinder Cut over to Eastern Market, or I take the Riverwalk from my home to downtown.
We have all kinds of fantastic amenities, which include fountains and carousels. We have a cafe, bike shop, butterfly gardens, all on an international waterfront. The Conservancy is responsible for all the operations, the maintenance, the programming, the security, and as importantly, raising all the funds in order to support this effort.
When we got started on this, I think it was important for all of us to recognize that we needed an entirely new approach. We needed a level of public-private partnership that probably hadn't existed before on a project of this magnitude.
The city has played a major role in supporting this effort with funds to support the future mixed-use development and preparing just infrastructure for the development of the project.
The public and the private have come together in a way that's kind of unbelievable, quite frankly. I've never seen this kind of coordination before, where people are working together and see what assets we as a city bring to the table and complement what the private industry bring to the table.
General Motors put a tremendous amount of resources into this project, $25 million in the creation of the plaza, and just terrific leadership throughout. And clearly it would not have happened without the Kresge Foundation. They put $50 million into this project. They said, look, we're going to help you get this done, and we're going to bring in other foundations and others to partner with you, and so it really could not have been done without them.
At the end of the day, we wouldn't be where we are today, completing this 3 miles of developed waterfront, but for the community coming together and saying, you know what, this is our waterfront, and we are all going to come together in a variety of ways in the revitalization and the restoration of our riverfront.
I do think that our Conservancy can be a model for a lot of other cities, not just for their waterfront, but for any activity where you need the public and the private to engage for the outcome of something very, very positive.
Throughout the most challenging economic time, we're starting to see all kinds of new projects. We have the Port Authority Terminal now. We have the new environmental high school. We have a lot of activity already taking place.
While we are so proud about how far we've come, we really still have a ways to go. And a ways to go meaning more dollars, not only to construct, but to operate and to maintain and to program this public space.
It really has changed the postcard image of the city of Detroit. It used to be that if you were in Windsor and you looked across the river, you would see some beat up old buildings and some abandoned cars. Now you look at it and you see the spectacular riverfront. You see millions of people coming down for the fireworks and for the marathon and for everything that's starting to take place on the riverfront.
It begins to create this sense of destination, riverfront as being a destination place.
I have 3 kids, 10, 7, and 5. The Riverwalk is one of their favorite places to go, no question about it. We take our bikes down there, we picnic down there, so it's this huge connector that we don't have to get into our car and drive down there and find a place to park.
If we don't have families here in the city of Detroit, the city will never come back. So everything that we can do that's geared toward family and family fun, we need to continue to invest in that.
This project has connected all these different communities in a way that I probably wouldn't have guessed.
We have a vision of 5.5 miles of riverfront that we're working to develop. We are in the midst of really the final phases of the first phase of our vision, which is the East Riverfront. The dream for the West Riverfront is very similar to the East in that we are looking to open up the waterfront to connect the public to the river. Right now, on the West, even more so, there is almost zero access to the waterfront.
I can't wait till the Riverfront West is complete so that we can have that connection to the East so that we can enjoy the water, the riverfront, the walks with our family.
Over the course of the next 10 or 20 years, the riverfront is going to look entirely different, and it is going to be really back to the future in a sense. 300 years ago, when the city was founded, at the foot of Woodward, at the Detroit River, we're going to see the city reblossom coming from that same geography.
The riverfront gives you peace, it gives you pleasure, it gives you beauty. Everybody seems to be so happy when they're down here.
The riverfront has showed us how great we can be. We can think big and we can do big things.
Being able to look across the river and see another country and to enjoy the beauty of the river where it's open to everybody. Downtown is sort of like everybody's neighborhood.
Thank you. Very proud. So I think it's really important, as I mentioned earlier, that this is all wonderful, and it's fantastic to be able to be the face of this public space portion, which is the first phase of the development of our riverfront. But quite frankly, we wouldn't be where we are today without this exceptional public-private partnership. I know the hour is late. I have some other slides, but I'm not going to, for the sake of time, the only one I want to go through is just two. One would be where are we next steps now? You saw a lot about, we talked a lot about fundraising. We spoke about the East Riverfront. This is a map that gives you a sense of our East Riverfront. This actually is our next phase of construction, which we are so excited about that we launched just this past July. So once we've completed, and just hold here, once we've completed this, this construction effort, we will have completed the East Riverfront, which will provide us with a contiguous 3.5 miles of beautiful public space, all while we begin to go west to our bridge to Canada, which is the Ambassador Bridge. There's all kinds of fabulous development that we have planned in order to complete the riverfront. We are also, as George mentioned, that part of what is so critical to this public space development is the economic piece. And so our mission is not only to develop the public space on the riverfront, but as importantly to serve as a catalyst and partnership with others to support that economic development. So to that extent, we've got an economic impact analysis underway right now. We anecdotally share with the community that between 2.5 to 3 million people touch the riverfront, but we want to be more exact. We want to be able to gather the data so that we can focus on how many people have come to the riverfront, what type of value they've provided already, or all of the development has provided, and the future as it relates to the potential that this public space project will be able to generate. So we've got a lot of different development that has already sprung from the development of this public space, some of which you saw in the video, some that you saw in George's presentation. And this visual, we're really excited because we've got all levels of government, quite frankly, our United States Senator. We have, of course, our mayor of the city of Detroit, Governor Snyder, the chairman of my board, many of my board members, and of course we have George. So that being said, and these are just some, we can keep clicking, these are some of our development. This is some of the construction that's in play right now. Next visual, we've got all kinds of development, from enhancing the area, the shoreline development, to creating, establishing cameras, and we're opening up parks and lighting up our labyrinths. This is, George, your site, which is, there is one of the largest segments of our development that we have to address is the Uniroyal site. It's a site that's how many acres, George? About 65? Okay, 43 that will be actually developed, but it's a very large site which right now is contaminated, and really George and his team have been working very diligently to develop a remediation plan which has now been complete, which is a document that had to be agreed to by the state as well as the city and the the potentially the responsible parties, and that right now they're working to develop this site, and once the site is complete, we'll be able to develop on the site our portion, which is the public space piece. So that being said, that's it. I'm going to stop here, and what I just want to leave you with is that the riverfront, there is so much promise with this development, and we're so pleased. We believe that this development effort is one of the most exceptional public-private partnerships that have so much to do today with a significant amount of quality of life and pride in our community. And as importantly, the riverfront will play a critical role in the future of Detroit. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, sliding the time schedule back, Rainey Hamilton, our founder of this feast, has told me that we have to limit our question-answer response to about 10 minutes. I'm going to ask our panel to come forward. I'm going to ask Kate Roy to put the lights on above the panel. And I'm going to ask also Tiffany to take the other microphone and work the crowd with me here a little bit. You work that area. And who would like to ask a question?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Detroit. I am from Miami, Florida, via Jamaica. I must say that the expectation of coming to Detroit was for NOMA, and the dread of coming to Detroit was from the news from other than Detroit. But seeing what I saw tonight, I don't think you're branding Detroit the way it should be branded, because it's a fabulous city. And I'm surprised with the public-private partnership and the nonprofit. Do you, I forgot your name. Sue, of all the projects that you are involved with, do you take an equity position in it?
Some of them we take an equity position in, and some we actually are just a soft lender. So it depends on the project, what the appraisal comes in at, what the need of the project. So we go either way, depending.
Wow. All right, firstly, I just want to say I think the presentations and all of the visuals were quite exquisite. I'm coming from New York, and I just saw the unfolding of the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, where the Nets will now play. And I remember when they first presented this project to the community, it was celebrated and it was in the news, the press. But after the unfolding of it, and they had concerts and things of that sort, the community became highly contested because of the economic structure and how things unfolded with the new tax base, Starbucks popping up left and right. And my question is, it's a two-point question, is what type of developmental triggers do you plan to put in place at the initial phase? And how do you plan to balance the population densities with the new tax base that come from the, these creative industries and things of that sort? Because, inevitably, gentrification is part of the equation when you start to talk about these developments. I like the concept of the MDI initiatives, but does that include the existing residents, the incumbent neighborhoods, or will they push them out? When I was attending Columbia for my master's, I realized that the university was doing a expansion in Manhattanville, and a lot of the community was actually being pushed out. So there's always two sides to the equation, and most of the times when developers or city organizations speak about these population growths and densities and new mixed use developments, they always speak about the positive aspect, but no one really addresses what happens with the people who exist in that neighborhood. They'll bring a Walmart into a community, but they won't talk about Joe's hardware shop. So how do you guys plan to balance these densities and prevent small businesses and residents from being gentrified?
Well, I can answer a couple things. I mean, for instance, one of the projects we're doing right now, which is the Auburn, we very intentionally wanted local businesses, so we got a very large grant from the Ford Foundation so that we could actually keep the rents below market level and pay for all the build-out costs. But again, if you're going to do that, you have to have a strategy and financing to do that. There's a lot of mixed income housing being developed in the neighborhood, and the other thing is Detroit had so much vacancy, nobody's been displaced. So, I mean, there's been so many vacant buildings and vacant land. Now, that's not to say 20 years from now that couldn't be an issue, but we don't see that being an issue anywhere in the near term. And there's a very intentional strategy to support affordable housing, mixed income housing, and market housing throughout this greater downtown. And, you know, we need all kinds and all types of housing for folks that are at our service levels, working in our anchor institutions, all the way up to the doctors. So we want all those folks to find a place to live in the neighborhood. We need all of them to create those densities.
I would say also under that, and Sue basically said it in another way, is that we don't have a shortage of affordable housing. We have a shortage of market rate housing, and we want some unaffordable housing, okay? That's our need right now, because we need to build our tax base. So, as Sue said, you know, nobody getting displaced. I mean, if they displaced, they just move it across the street, you know. So from that standpoint, I understand it years down, but we love to have to manage that problem when it occurs. I'll say this too, is that we do a lot of small business loans, and we take. I mean, we are kind of a very patient lender. We always make it work for the entrepreneur, because we always take the second position. It's very rarely we are in first position, and our money is very patient money, and so that does help the small business, and they do take full advantage of those programs. We do quite a bit of that. Yeah.
We have just a couple minutes left here, so why don't you ask a question? We'll come for one more, and that's going to be it for now. So go ahead.
Actually, Steve and I are combining our questions for efficiency.
Okay.
It's quick. It's quick. No. It's quick. It's all related. Anyway, my name is Kimberly. Oh, efficiency. My name is Kimberly Dowdell. I'm a native Detroiter. I'm really glad to be home. I'm really excited to hear about the things that are happening. I'm currently living in New York City, so I'm kind of thinking about all the things I'm seeing there, and obviously what's happening here, and trying to figure out what to do with my life. But so actually that plays into Steve's question, which is for all of you. I think a lot of people, even if you're not from Detroit, are really energized about all the new development. So perhaps you can address how young students or people who are a few years out of school, or even more seasoned professionals, can actually get involved and become engaged in the development here. And then also, my question, I'm really excited about what's happening on the riverfront, but also, I've been touring people around because, we're in my hometown. They're like, oh, well, to drive me around. So a couple of times I've actually taken people to Belle Isle, and seeing Central Park and all the funding that they have and how well maintained it is and all that. I'm wondering, what are the plans for Belle Isle? I know that's probably related somewhat to the riverfront project. So if you could talk to that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
I guess Belle Isle would fall to me because I am negotiating now a deal, and it's getting a lot of publicity. Some folks don't like this because they feel that it's taken away another jewel of the city, which right now is a jewel, but is also a liability. But we are negotiating a deal now with the state Department of Natural Resources to turn Belle Isle into a state park. And the state will take over the debt associated with running the park. It's a beautiful place, and it's really in decline. If you're going over there, I mean, it's nothing like what I grew up, what Belle Isle used to be. So we are working on a deal now with the state that I'm negotiating on behalf of the city that will restore it to its greatness, and we feel it's the right way to go in this regard. And the island will not be free anymore if the state takes it over as a state park. We'll charge the arduous fee of $10 a year. Okay, that's for a car. You can put more than one person in the car too. And if you walk or ride a bike, it's still free. Or ride a bus, it's still free. But I think what you'll find is that means that it takes $6 million a year that the city is paying no longer has to pay on the general fund. The state is going to do a bond issue and restore a lot of the things that we grew up with and you grew up with, knowing that used to be on Belle Isle that you don't see today. I mean, it is a jewel. It's no doubt about it. And so we're looking forward to this. We will. We will. We will. Thank you.
So to add to George's questions and to respond to the other part of your question, I think that in terms of from a young professional's perspective, this is a wonderful place and time, I think, for a young professional, for an older professional, for anyone to make a difference. The riverfront is, it's a perfect example of how folks have come together to support something that no one thought would ever happen. You saw some of those early pictures that I shared with you. And you know, when the effort was launched, we, in partnership with others, went to visit prospective donors, and we had these beautiful visuals we could show. We showed, and most everyone said, this isn't going to happen. This can't happen. People are not going to invest in Detroit. The riverfront was a $400 million launch. Based upon all of the dollars that the city put into the project in bringing down the silos, demolishing the silos, and negotiating, moving the silos off, the silo companies off the riverfront, all the private property owners donated their land to the Conservancy by way of conservation easements. General Motors built out their riverfront portion, which was $25 million, the majority of which they donated to the Conservancy. The state pledged to develop the first urban state park in Michigan on our waterfront, and that was minimally a $40 million initiative. And then the Conservancy, our nut in that $400 million was $140 million. We pledged to raise those dollars in order to not only to construct, but to build an endowment, because we're the perpetual stewards of that space, operation, maintenance, programming, security. In addition to serving as the stewards to the DeQuinder Cut. So we've all taken a big step forward with a lot of focus, a lot of, at the end of the day, passion in bringing back our community. And so we find that with young professionals, the need is here. The need is here to come and join us. There is so much that you can do, not only from an employment perspective, but certainly as an ambassador. So I heard the gentleman who made the comment about Detroit and how when you come here, and I can tell you that's everyone. I have hosted so many different visitors on the waterfront, and they, you know, my visuals, it doesn't begin to tell the story of what's really here. And when you visit the waterfront, you say, whoa, where did this come from? So, you know, come and join us. Come and join us and support what's happening in Detroit, from Midtown to downtown to the broad-based plan to the riverfront, because we're moving forward. And the people that you see here, we're just an example of the many folks that are in this for real, to bring our community back. So I offer you an invitation.
Well, thank you very much. We have reached the end, but I have one question for the audience. How many of you, particularly those of you that come here from out of town, see Detroit differently than when you arrived? And that's due to not only the people here, but many of the Detroiters that are out here, that are NOMA members that are working on it from day to day. I think we all owe them all a great hand. And this brings to an end our session. I'd like to call on Sanford to come back up and is Sanford here? Oh, Rainey to come back up and close us out appropriately, and I guess give us directions to the buses and that sort of thing as well.
Thank you all for participating. Thank you especially to the panelists for taking this time out of your busy schedules and giving up tickets to the Tigers win tonight. So thank you all. Tiffany, you want to talk about transportation? Buses will be leaving, going back downtown. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.